The village of Mwamba had never seen a night like this. Amora stood at the edge of her father's compound, watching the celebration unfold beneath a blanket of stars. Drums echoed through the warm air, and dancers moved like flames around the bonfire. Tonight marked the harvest festival, and as Chief Okonkwo's only daughter, she was expected to smile and greet every guest. But something felt wrong. The air tasted metallic, and the usual chorus of night insects had gone silent. She pulled her ceremonial beaded shawl tighter around her shoulders and slipped away from the noise. The path to the sacred grove was forbidden after dark, but Amora had walked it 1,000 times. She needed to think. Tomorrow, her father would announce her engagement to Jabori, the warrior from the neighboring village. It was a political marriage, one that would unite two powerful tribes. Everyone said it was her duty. Everyone except her heart. The moonlight filtered through the acacia trees, casting silver patterns on the red earth. That's when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong. A sharp intake of breath, human and desperate. Amora froze. Her hand moved instinctively to the small knife she kept hidden in her waistband. Chief's daughter or not, her father had taught her to be prepared. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. A figure emerged from behind a massive baobab tree. He was tall, covered in dust and dried blood. His clothes were torn, and he moved with the careful steps of someone fighting pain with every breath. But it was his eyes that stopped her from screaming. They weren't the eyes of a criminal or a madman. They were the eyes of someone carrying an unbearable truth. "Chief's daughter," he rasped, stumbling forward. "Please. I need you to listen." Amora raised her knife. "Stay back. I'll call the guards." "No." The urgency in his voice made her pause. "If you call them, everyone in that village dies tonight. Your father, your people, everyone." She studied him carefully. He was young, perhaps only a few years older than her 20 years. Despite the dirt and blood, she could see he had once been well-groomed. A scholar, maybe, or a messenger. His accent carried the refined tones of the coastal cities. "Who are you?" she demanded. "My name is Kofi. I'm a cartographer from the trading port of Zanara." He leaned heavily against the tree, clearly exhausted. 3 days ago, I was hired to guide a group of men through the interior. They said they were merchants looking for new trade routes. But they lied. Amora's grip on the knife didn't waver. "What do you mean?" "They're slavers," Kofi said, and the word hung in the air like poison. "The most brutal crew on the coast. They've been planning this raid for months. They have weapons you've never seen, guns that fire faster than arrows, and they know every detail about your village's defenses. Someone has been feeding them information." Her blood turned cold. "That's impossible. My father has guards everywhere. We have warriors, weapons." "They're coming tonight," Kofi interrupted, his voice breaking. "During the festival, when everyone is distracted, when the warriors are drunk on palm wine and celebration. They're already surrounding the village. I only escaped because one of them got careless. I killed him and ran, but they're right behind me." Amora's mind raced. This could be a trick, an elaborate lie. But something in his desperation felt genuine. "Why should I believe you?" Kofi reached into his torn shirt and pulled out a folded piece of paper. His hands shook as he handed it to her. "This is their map. Look at it. They've marked every hut, every storage building, every guard post. They know where your father sleeps. They know where the children will be. This isn't a random raid. It's a surgical strike designed to take the maximum number of captives with minimal resistance." Amora unfolded the paper, and her breath caught. The map was detailed beyond anything she'd ever seen. Someone had spent months gathering this information. Someone who walked freely through Mwamba, who attended council meetings, who knew every secret. "There's a traitor in your village," Kofi said quietly. "Someone close to your father. Someone who'll signal the slavers when to attack. And if you run back right now, if you tell anyone about this, that traitor will know. They'll change the plan, and you'll never figure out who it is before it's too late. We have one chance to save your people, but you have to trust me. You have to stay silent until we know who we're dealing with." Amora looked from the map to Kofi's desperate face, then back toward the village where drums still beat and her people still danced, unaware that death was creeping through the darkness toward them. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to warn her father, to raise the alarm. But Kofi was right about one thing. If there was truly a traitor, if someone had been planning this for months, rushing in blindly would only get everyone killed. She made her decision. "Tell me everything you know. We don't have much time." Kofi's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. But remember, don't say a word to anyone. Not yet. Or we all die. Kofi slid down the trunk of the baobab tree, finally allowing his exhausted body to rest. Blood seeped through a makeshift bandage on his left side. Amora knelt beside him, her medical training from the village healers taking over. She examined the wound with quick, efficient movements. This needs proper treatment, she said. You're losing too much blood. Later, Kofi insisted, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. First, you need to understand what we're facing. The man leading this operation is called Rashid the Red. That's not because of his hair. It's because everywhere he goes, the earth runs red with blood. He's taken more than 5,000 people in the last 3 years. He sells them to ships that cross the Great Water, and they're never seen again. Amara felt sick. She'd heard stories about slavers, but they always seemed like distant nightmares, problems for other villages. How many men does he have? 40 armed fighters, maybe more by now. They have rifles, pistols, and machetes. Your warriors have spears and bows. It won't be a fight. It'll be a slaughter. Kofi pulled out another crumpled paper from his pocket. This is their timeline. They attack 2 hours after midnight, when the festival is winding down but people are still too drunk to fight effectively. They'll fire shots into the air to create panic, then herd everyone into the village square. Anyone who resists dies immediately. Anyone who runs gets shot in the back. The clinical nature of the plan made Amora's skin crawl. You said there's a traitor. Who? I don't know their identity, but I know how they communicate. Kofi pointed to a symbol on the map, a small mark near the chief's compound. They use coded messages hidden in ordinary objects. Tonight, they are supposed to light a specific fire pattern to signal that everything is in position. 3 fires in a triangle formation, visible from the eastern ridge. Once Rashid sees that signal, the attack begins. Amora's mind spun through possibilities. The eastern ridge overlooked the entire village. Only a handful of people had access to that area during ceremonies, her father's closest advisors, the head of the guard, and the village elders. People she'd known her entire life. People she trusted. We need to identify the traitor before midnight, she said, thinking aloud. But we can't let anyone know we're looking. If word gets out, they'll just change the signal. Exactly. Kofi winced as he shifted position. But there's something else. The traitor isn't working alone. Someone from the outside has been visiting the village regularly, someone Rashid planted months ago to gather information and recruit the insider. A merchant, a traveler, someone who wouldn't raise suspicion. Amara thought back over recent months. Dozens of traders passed through Mwamba. They came for ivory, gold dust, and fine cloth. Her father welcomed them all, believing that trade brought prosperity and peace. Had one of them been studying the village like a predator studies prey? Wait, she said suddenly. There's a spice merchant who's been coming here for the past 6 months. Adisa. He always brings gifts for my father, and he stays for days at a time. He asks a lot of questions about village traditions, security measures. I thought he was just curious, making conversation. Kofi's eyes widened. Tall man? Scar across his left cheek? Gold tooth? Yes. How did you? That's Rashid's brother, Kofi said grimly. His name isn't Adisa. It's Malik. He's the scout, the planner. He's probably in the village right now, watching everything, making sure the plan stays on track. And if he's here, he's in contact with the traitor. Amara stood abruptly, pacing in the small clearing. Everything was falling into place like pieces of a nightmare puzzle. The festival. Malik suggested to my father that we make it bigger this year, invite more people from surrounding villages. He said it would strengthen alliances. My father thought it was a wonderful idea. Of course he did, Kofi said bitterly. More people means more captives, more confusion during the attack. Malik's been playing your father like a drum. And somewhere in your village, someone is helping him do it. A terrible thought struck Amara. My wedding announcement. It's supposed to happen tonight at midnight. Everyone will be gathered in one place, all the important people from both villages. If the attack comes right after, they'll capture 2 chiefs for the price of 1, Kofi finished. Along with all the warriors and leaders. It's brilliant in the most horrible way. They'll decapitate both tribes in a single night. Amara felt rage building in her chest, hot and fierce. These men had turned her wedding, her father's joy, her people's celebration, into a trap. They'd weaponized hospitality and trust. We're going to stop them. How? Kofi asked. We can't warn anyone without tipping off the traitor. We can't fight 40 armed men. We can't evacuate the village without causing exactly the kind of panic that would trigger the attack early. Then we find the traitor, we capture Malik, and we turn their plan against them. Amara's voice was steel. My father taught me that the best defense is understanding your enemy better than they understand themselves. These slavers think they know everything about us. But they don't know me. They don't know that the chief's daughter spent her childhood learning strategy from warriors, medicine from healers, and politics from every council meeting she secretly listened to. They think I'm just a prize to be married off. Kofi looked at her with new respect. What do you need me to do? First, we get you hidden and treated. There's an old storage hut near the grove where the healers keep their supplies. No one goes there during festivals. She helped him to his feet, supporting his weight. Then I go back to the celebration and find Malik. I need to watch him, see who he talks to, who he watches. The traitor will have to communicate with him before midnight. That's our window. And if you're discovered? Then I improvise. Amara's jaw set with determination. I've been pretending to be an obedient daughter my whole life. I can pretend a little longer. They moved quietly through the grove, Kofi leaning heavily on Amara's shoulder. The drums still pounded in the distance, oblivious to the danger. When they reached the storage hut, Amara quickly gathered herbs and clean cloth. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency as she cleaned and properly dressed Kofi's wound. You should have been a healer, Kofi said through gritted teeth. I should have been many things, Amara replied. But tonight, I need to be a spy. Rest here. Don't make a sound. If I'm not back within 2 hours, it means something went wrong. If that happens, try to warn someone, anyone. Maybe they'll believe you. Maybe they won't. But at least try. Amara, Kofi caught her hand as she turned to leave. Thank you for trusting me. I know you had no reason to believe a stranger. She looked down at him, this young man who'd risked everything to warn people he'd never met. You could have run. You could have saved yourself. But you came here instead. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. As she slipped back toward the village, Amara felt the weight of every life resting on her shoulders. Somewhere in the celebration, a traitor walked among her people. Somewhere in the darkness, 40 armed men waited for their signal. And somewhere between the truth and the lies, she had to find a way to save everyone she loved without saying a word about the danger. The drums beat louder as she approached. She straightened her shawl, put on a smile, and stepped back into the light. Time was running out. The festival had reached its peak. Warriors performed elaborate battle dances, their bodies gleaming with sweat in the firelight. Children chased each other between the adults, laughing and shrieking with joy. The smell of roasted meat and spiced wine filled the air. To anyone watching, it was a perfect celebration of peace and prosperity. But Amara saw it differently now. She saw targets, vulnerable people who had no idea they were being herded toward catastrophe. Her father sat on his ceremonial chair at the center of the gathering, his gray-streaked beard adorned with golden beads. Beside him sat Chief Baresa from the neighboring village, Jabori's father. They were deep in conversation, probably discussing the alliance their children's marriage would seal. The irony made Amara's stomach turn. These two powerful men, who'd spent their lives protecting their people, had no idea that destruction was circling them like vultures. She scanned the crowd methodically, searching for Malik. The spice merchant was easy to spot. He stood near the food tables, laughing with a group of village elders. His expensive robes marked him as successful, and his generous nature had made him popular. He'd given her father a beautiful carved chest just this morning, filled with rare spices and perfumes. A gift, he'd said, to honor the upcoming wedding. Now Amara wondered what intelligence that gift had brought him, what secrets he'd extracted during casual conversations. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, accepting congratulations from well-wishers who wanted to talk about her future with Jabori. She smiled and nodded, but her attention never left Malik. She needed to see who approached him, who he sought out, which interactions lasted too long or seemed too purposeful. Amara. Jabori's voice cut through her concentration. He appeared beside her, tall and handsome in his warrior's regalia. His smile was genuine, if somewhat uncertain. They barely knew each other, but he seemed kind. Another person whose life hung in the balance tonight. I've been looking for you. Your father wants us to lead the next dance together. Perfect cover, she thought. From the dance floor, she'd have a clear view of the entire gathering. I'd be honored, she said, taking his offered hand. They moved to the center of the circle as the drums shifted to a traditional courting rhythm. Jabari was a skilled dancer, leading her through the intricate steps with confident ease. Under other circumstances, she might have enjoyed it. Instead, she used every turn and spin to survey the crowd. That's when she saw it. Malik had moved to the edge of the gathering, near the path that led toward the eastern ridge. He pulled out a small leather pouch and examined something inside, then looked up toward the ridge with calculating eyes. He was checking the time, Amora realized. Making sure everything was on schedule. A woman approached him. Even from a distance, Amora recognized her distinctive purple head wrap. Her breath caught. No. Not her. Emma. Her father's sister. The woman who'd raised Amora after her mother died in childbirth. The woman who'd taught her to braid her hair, to identify healing herbs, to navigate the complex politics of village life. Aunt Emma, who everyone trusted, who sat in on council meetings, who knew every secret worth knowing. Amora nearly stumbled in the dance. Jabari caught her smoothly, concern crossing his face. Are you all right? Just dizzy, she managed. The heat. But her eyes stayed locked on Malik and Emma. They weren't touching, weren't even standing particularly close. To anyone else, it would look like a polite conversation between a merchant and an elder. But Amora saw the way Emma's hand moved to her necklace, adjusting it 3 times. A signal. She saw the way Malik's fingers brushed against his pouch in response. Another signal. They were confirming the plan. The dance ended, and Jabari escorted her to the side. She needed to get closer, to hear what they were saying. But as she started to move, her father's voice boomed across the gathering. My people. My friends. The hour approaches for our great announcement. No. It was too early. Midnight was still an hour away. Amora's heart raced as she saw Aunt Emma slip away from Malik, heading toward the path to the eastern ridge. The signal fires. She was going to light them early. Amora had seconds to make a decision. If she followed Emma and stopped her, the slavers would know something was wrong. They might attack anyway, or worse, they might vanish and plan another raid when everyone's guard was down. But if she let Emma light the fires, she'd have less than an hour to save everyone. She needed to buy time. She needed to think. She needed to. Amora, come, her father called, gesturing for her to join him at the center. The crowd was gathering, excited for the announcement. Jabari's father stood beside Chief Okonkwo, beaming with pride. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. She walked forward on trembling legs, her mind racing through possibilities. The crowd pressed in close, hundreds of faces all turned toward her with joy and expectation. People who would be in chains by dawn if she didn't do something. Her father took her hand, his grip warm and strong. Tonight, we celebrate not just the harvest, but the future. A joining of 2 great families, 2 strong villages, united through the marriage of my beloved daughter Amora to the noble warrior Jabari. The crowd erupted in cheers. Drums thundered. Somewhere in the darkness, Amora knew, Aunt Emma was climbing toward the ridge. Somewhere beyond the village boundaries, 40 armed men were checking their weapons and preparing to move. And somewhere in this celebrating crowd, Malik was watching, counting down the minutes until he'd see 3 fires light up the night sky. Father, Amora heard herself say, her voice somehow steady despite the chaos in her mind. Before we proceed, I have a request. A bride's privilege. Chief Okonkwo looked surprised but indulgent. Of course, my daughter. What do you wish? She had one chance to change everything without revealing what she knew. One chance to rewrite the night script before the trap closed around them all. Her eyes found Malik in the crowd. He was watching her intently, sensing something unexpected. I wish to honor our sacred traditions, Amora said, her voice carrying across the silent gathering. Before the engagement is announced, I request the trial of truth. I wish to spend 1 hour in the sacred grove, communing with the ancestors, ensuring that this union has their blessing. It's an old custom, rarely practiced, but it's my right as chief's daughter. A murmur ran through the crowd. The trial of truth was indeed ancient, nearly forgotten. It required the bride to meditate alone in the grove while the community waited in respectful silence. No celebration, no drums, no noise that might disturb the spiritual communion. And most importantly, no one was allowed near the grove during the trial. Anyone who violated that sanctity would bring terrible luck to the marriage. Her father looked torn. Chief Baisa frowned, clearly seeing this as an insult or a delay tactic. Jabari's expression was unreadable. But tradition was tradition, and Amora had invoked it publicly. To refuse would be to admit that her father valued politics over sacred customs. The trial of truth, Chief Okonkwo said slowly. You're certain this is what you want? I am, Father. I want the ancestors' blessing. I want to be sure. She met his eyes, trying to communicate something deeper, trying to make him hear what she couldn't say. Trust me. Please trust me. He must have seen something in her expression because his frown deepened, but he nodded. Very well. Let it be done according to the old ways. 1 hour of silence. No one approaches the grove. My daughter will commune with those who came before us, and when she returns, we will know that our path is blessed. Malik's face darkened. This wasn't part of his plan. The silence would make it impossible for him to coordinate with his men. The delay pushed everything too close to dawn, too close to when people would start sobering up. Amora saw him start to move toward the path, probably to signal Emma, to tell her to light the fires anyway. She had to stop him. Had to keep everyone here, watching, giving her time to reach the ridge herself. I have one more request, she said, her voice ringing with authority she'd learned from watching her father lead. I ask that Malik the merchant accompany the witness circle. His recent gift to our family was so generous, so thoughtful. It would honor him to be part of this sacred moment, to stand with the elders as they maintain the boundary of silence around the grove. It was a masterstroke of manipulation. To refuse would be insulting and suspicious. To accept meant Malik would be surrounded by elders, unable to slip away without being noticed. She saw the calculation in his eyes, the flash of anger quickly masked by false gratitude. I am honored beyond words, Malik said smoothly, bowing low. But his eyes promised consequences. As the villagers arranged themselves according to the ancient custom, as the drums finally fell silent and the sacred hour began, Amora walked toward the grove. But she wouldn't be meditating. She'd be racing against time to stop Emma, to somehow neutralize the threat without breaking her silence, without revealing what she knew. The moon was climbing toward midnight. The slavers were moving into position. And Amora was walking alone into the darkness, the fate of 2 villages resting on her shoulders. Don't say a word, Kofi's warning echoed in her mind. Or we all die. The sacred grove swallowed Amora in shadows the moment she passed beneath its ancient trees. Behind her, the village had fallen into the eerie silence of the trial of truth. No drums, no voices, just the whisper of wind through leaves and the distant chirping of night birds returning now that the celebration had quieted. She had 1 hour. 1 hour to stop Emma, to prevent the signal fires, and to figure out how to warn her people without speaking a word. She ran. Not along the main path where villagers might see her, but through the network of game trails she'd learned as a child. Her feet knew every root, every stone. The ceremonial beads in her hair clicked softly with each stride, and she reached up to remove them, silencing even that small sound. Speed was essential, but stealth was survival. The path to the eastern ridge was steep and treacherous in the darkness. Amora's lungs burned as she climbed, using exposed roots and rocks as handholds. She could smell smoke now, faint but unmistakable. She was too late. Emma had already started lighting the fires. The ridge opened before her suddenly, a flat expanse of red earth that jutted out over the valley like a balcony. From here, you could see everything, the village below, glowing with torches and cook fires, the dark expanse of forest stretching toward the coast, and 3 small fires arranged in a perfect triangle, their flames dancing in the night breeze. Aunt Emma stood beside them, her purple head wrap replaced with a dark cloth that made her nearly invisible. She wasn't alone. 2 men stood with her, both armed with rifles. Guards. Malik hadn't trusted his inside contact to work alone. Amora dropped low behind a cluster of rocks, her mind racing. She couldn't fight 3 people, 2 of them armed. She couldn't call for help without breaking the sacred silence and revealing everything she knew. And even if she could somehow put out the fires, the guards would just relight them or shoot her and alert Rashid anyway. She needed a different approach. She needed to think like her father, like a strategist. What did the slavers need? They needed the signal to know it was safe to attack. They needed confirmation that the village was vulnerable, that the celebration was still going, that everyone was drunk and distracted. What if she could give them the wrong confirmation? What if she could turn their own plan against them? Her eyes scanned the ridge desperately, looking for inspiration, for tools, for anything. That's when she saw it, a second fire pit, unused, about 30 feet from Emma's position. It was part of an old warning system from decades ago, back when the village still feared raids from rival tribes. 4 fires meant enemy approaching. 5 fires meant retreat and hide. 3 fires, the slaver's signal, had never been part of the old system because 3 was an incomplete pattern, meaningless in the ancient code. But what if she completed the pattern differently? Amora moved silently around the ridge's perimeter, using shadows and rock formations for cover. She could hear Amma talking to the guards in a low voice. Rashid will see the signal within minutes. His men are already in position. By dawn, we'll be rich beyond imagination. The coastal slavers pay premium prices for healthy workers, especially women and children. This village alone will fetch enough gold to live like royalty. The casual cruelty in her aunt's voice made Amora's hands shake with rage. This woman had held her when she cried, had tended her fevers, had taught her the names of the stars. And all the while, she'd been planning to sell her own people like livestock. What about the chief's daughter? One of the guards asked. Rashid specifically wanted her. Said she'd bring double price because of her education. She'll be taken with the others, Amma replied. Though I admit, part of me will miss her. She was always clever. Too clever sometimes. But business is business. Amora reached the old fire pit. It still contained dry tinder and wood from its last use, protected from rain by an overhanging rock. She pulled out the flint and striker she always carried, a habit from years of helping prepare the village's ceremonial fires. Her hands moved quickly, striking sparks into the tinder. It caught, a small flame growing steadily. The sound of the striker made one of the guards turn. What was that? Probably an animal, Amma said dismissively. We're alone up here. Everyone's down in the village, waiting for that fool girl to finish her meditation. But the guard wasn't convinced. He started walking toward Amora's position, rifle raised. She had seconds before he spotted her. The fire in the pit was growing but wasn't large enough yet to be seen from a distance. She needed to make it bigger, brighter, impossible to miss. She needed to add a fifth fire to the signal pattern. With no other option, Amora did something that would have horrified her father. She pulled off her ceremonial shawl, the beautiful hand-woven cloth that had belonged to her mother, and threw it onto the flames. The expensive fabric caught immediately, blazing bright with the oils and dyes woven into it. Then she grabbed a branch, set it alight, and ran. There, the guard shouted. Someone's here. Gunfire cracked through the night. Amora felt a bullet whip past her head as she dove behind a boulder. She had the lit branch, but she needed to light 3 more fires to complete the warning pattern before they caught her. She sprinted toward the next fire pit, her breath ragged with fear and exertion. Another shot. This one closer. She felt the impact through the ground as the bullet struck dirt inches from her feet. But she reached the second pit and thrust her branch into it, not waiting to see if it caught before running to the third location. Stop her. Amma's voice, shrill with panic now. If she changes the signal pattern, Rashid will think it's a trap. That was exactly what Amora wanted. 5 fires meant danger, meant retreat. If Rashid saw 5 fires instead of 3, he'd pull his men back, at least temporarily. It would buy time. Not much, but maybe enough. The third fire roared to life. 1 more to go. But both guards were closing in now, and Amma had grabbed a torch, trying to extinguish the fires Amora had lit. The ridge had become a chaotic battlefield of light and shadow, flame and gunfire. Amora reached the 4th and final position. Her branch was nearly burned out. She thrust it desperately into the tinder, praying to the ancestors for one more miracle. The wood was damp. It wouldn't catch. She struck her flint again and again, but the sparks just sizzled and died. A guard appeared around a rock formation, rifle aimed at her chest. Got you. Amora looked up at him, defiant even in defeat. She'd failed. 3 fires still burned in their triangle pattern. Her additional fires hadn't been enough to change the signal. The slavers would still attack. Everyone would still die. And she'd broken the sacred silence, violated the trial of truth, all for nothing. Then a voice cut through the darkness. No. I've got you. Kofi emerged from the shadows behind the guard, a heavy branch in his hands. He swung it with desperate strength, connecting with the back of the guard's skull. The man dropped like a stone. Before the second guard could react, Kofi was on him too, fighting with the fury of someone who'd seen too much evil and refused to let it win. Light the fire. Kofi shouted to Amora as he grappled with the guard. Finish what you started. Amora turned back to the fire pit, striking the flint with renewed determination. Spark. Spark. Catch. Finally, a tiny flame began to grow. She fed it carefully, adding the smallest pieces of tinder first, then larger sticks. The fire grew, spreading, until it matched the brightness of the others. 5 fires now burned on the eastern ridge. The pattern was complete. From somewhere in the darkness beyond the village, a horn sounded. Then another. The slavers had seen the signal and interpreted it correctly. Danger, possible trap, retreat to fallback positions. They wouldn't attack tonight. They'd wait, regroup, try to figure out what had gone wrong with their perfect plan. But Emma wasn't finished. She'd grabbed the fallen guard's rifle and pointed it at Amora. "You stupid, stupid girl. You've ruined everything. Years of planning, months of preparation. Do you know what Rashid will do to me when he finds out I failed?" "The same thing he would have done anyway," Kofi said quietly. He'd subdued the second guard and now stood with the man's rifle pointed at Emma. "Slavers don't have partners. They have tools. Once you'd served your purpose, Rashid would have sold you just like everyone else. Or more likely, killed you to eliminate witnesses." The truth of it showed on Emma's face. She'd been played, used, just as surely as she'd planned to use her own people. Her grip on the rifle wavered. "It's over, Aunt Emma," Amora said softly. "Put down the weapon. Face what you've done." For a long moment, Emma stood frozen, the rifle shaking in her hands. Then, with a sound that was half sob, half scream, she threw the weapon down and collapsed to her knees. The proud, dignified woman who'd raised Amora was gone, replaced by someone broken and terrified. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Emma whispered. "At first, it was just information. Malik promised me wealth, security, a life beyond this village. I was tired of being passed over, tired of living in my brother's shadow. But then the plan grew bigger, darker, and I couldn't back out. He said if I betrayed him, he'd have my family killed first." Amora felt no sympathy, only a cold, hard certainty. "You made your choices. Now you'll face justice for them." The sacred hour of silence was ending. From the village below, drums began to beat again, signaling that Amora should return from her communion with the ancestors. She looked at Kofi, this stranger who'd risked everything, who'd followed her up the ridge despite his injuries to make sure she didn't face the danger alone. "Thank you," she said simply. "We're not done yet," Kofi replied, looking toward the forest. "Rashid and his men are still out there. They'll figure out what happened. They'll come back, maybe not tonight, but soon. And next time, they'll be ready for resistance." Amora nodded. The battle was won, but the war wasn't over. It was time to stop being silent. Time to tell her father everything. Time to prepare for the real fight that was coming. Together, they walked back down the ridge, 3 prisoners ahead of them, and a village full of people who needed to hear the truth that had nearly destroyed them all. Chief Okonkwo's face was carved from stone as he listened to Amora's story. They sat in the council chamber, a circular building at the heart of the compound where village matters were decided. The celebration outside had ended abruptly when Amora returned not with blessings from the ancestors, but with prisoners and tales of betrayal. Now, as dawn approached, the chamber was filled with elders, warriors, and witnesses trying to process the impossible truth. Emma sat in the center, bound and silent, her eyes fixed on the ground. Malik's 2 guards flanked her, similarly restrained. The map Kofi had carried lay spread across the council table, its detailed markings speaking louder than any testimony. Chief Baisa sat beside Okonkwo, his expression darkening as he realized his own village had been targeted as well. 40 armed men, Chief Okonkwo repeated, his voice heavy with controlled rage. Waiting in the forest. Ready to take our people, our children, and sell them across the sea. And my own sister helped plan it. "Brother, please," Emma began, but Okonkwo raised his hand, silencing her. "You lost the right to call me brother when you sold our people for gold." He turned to Kofi, who sat with fresh bandages courtesy of the village healers. "You risked your life to warn us. Why? You owed us nothing." Kofi met the chief's eyes steadily. "I come from a coastal village that no longer exists. 3 years ago, Rashid the Red came in the night. I was away, trading in the next town. When I returned, everyone was gone. My mother, my sisters, my friends. All taken. I've been tracking Rashid ever since, trying to stop him, trying to save others from the fate my family suffered. When I realized what he was planning here, I couldn't let it happen again." A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Amora saw her father's expression shift from anger to something deeper, a shared understanding of loss and the duty to protect. Chief Baisa spoke next, his voice grave. "The question now is, what do we do? These slavers are still out there. They'll regroup and try again." "We prepare," Amora said, standing. All eyes turned to her. "We fortify the village. We train every able person to fight. We send word to allied villages and create a network of warning signals. We make it so difficult, so costly to attack us that Rashid moves on to easier prey. My daughter speaks wisdom, Okonkwo said, pride breaking through his stern expression. But there's more we must do. We must warn other villages along the slaver routes. We must expose Rashid's network and destroy it from within. That will take time and resources, one of the elders objected. We're farmers and craftspeople, not warriors. Then we learn to be both, Amara countered. Or we wait to be victims. Those are our choices. Jabori, who had been silent until now, rose to his feet. My father and I pledge our warriors to this cause. Amara has shown more courage and strategic thinking than many seasoned fighters. If she'll still have me as her husband after this night, I'd be honored to stand beside her not just in marriage, but in this fight. Amara looked at him with new appreciation. He hadn't questioned her actions or tried to take control. He'd listened, understood, and offered partnership. Perhaps their arranged marriage could become something real after all. I accept, she said simply. Chief Okonkwo nodded his approval, then turned his attention to Amma. You will be tried according to our laws. The penalty for treason is exile or death. The council will decide. Wait, Kofi interjected. Before you pass judgment, consider using her knowledge. She knows Rashid's methods, his contacts, his plans. She could help us anticipate his next moves. You want us to trust a traitor? One warrior spat. I want you to use every advantage you have, Kofi replied. Rashid is cunning and experienced. He's taken thousands of people because he's always 3 steps ahead. Amma's information could save lives. Amara watched her aunt, seeing the calculation behind those familiar eyes. Amma was weighing her options, trying to find an angle that would save her skin. It was sickening, but Kofi was right. They needed every advantage. She will help us, Chief Okonkwo declared. Under guard, under watch, she will tell us everything she knows about Rashid's operation. And when we've extracted every useful piece of information, then the council will decide her fate. Until that time, she'll be held in the isolation hut. As guards led Amma away, she looked back at Amara. There was no remorse in her expression, only resentment and fear. Whatever love had once existed between them was ashes now, burned away by greed and betrayal. The council continued through the dawn, making plans and assigning responsibilities. Scouts would be sent to track Rashid's movements. Messages would go to every allied village. The fortifications would begin immediately. Kofi would stay and help train defenders, sharing everything he'd learned about Slava tactics. When the meeting finally ended, Amara stepped outside into the rising sun. The village was stirring, people emerging from their homes confused about the night's abrupt ending. Soon they would know the truth. Soon everyone would understand how close they'd come to disaster. You saved us all, her father said, joining her on the compound steps. Not just with your actions, but with your mind. You saw what I was blind to. You acted when I would have hesitated. I had help, Amara said, thinking of Kofi's desperate warning, his refusal to run to safety. True leaders always do. They recognize when to trust others, when to take risks, when to break even sacred traditions for the greater good. Okonkwo placed a hand on her shoulder. I've been teaching you to be a chief's wife. I should have been teaching you to be a chief. The word struck deep. Father, the traditions. Traditions are meant to protect and serve the people, not the other way around. If our traditions make us weak, make us vulnerable to predators like Rashid, then perhaps it's time some traditions changed. He smiled, a rare expression of pure paternal love. You have a strategic mind, a warrior's courage, and a leader's heart. Whether you marry Jabori or not, whether you stay in Mwamba or build your own path, you will always have my support. Tears stung Amara's eyes. She'd spent her whole life trying to be the daughter he wanted, never realizing he'd been waiting for her to become herself. Kofi approached them, moving carefully with his injuries. Chief Okonkwo, I request permission to stay in Mwamba for a time. There's nothing waiting for me on the coast, and here I might finally finish what I started 3 years ago. You're welcome to stay as long as you wish, Okonkwo replied. You've earned a place among us. As the sun climbed higher, villagers gathered in the square. Chief Okonkwo would address them soon, would tell them everything. There would be fear, anger, and difficult days ahead. But there would also be preparation, unity, and the fierce determination of people who refused to be prey. Amara stood between her father and Kofi, looking out at her people. Somewhere beyond the forest, Rashid was regrouping, planning his next move. He thought he was hunting vulnerable villages. He didn't know that one of those villages had just transformed into something far more dangerous, a community that knew its enemy, understood its own strength, and would fight with everything it had to protect its freedom. The drums began to beat again, but this time they weren't calling for celebration. They were calling the village to council, to truth, and to war. The battle for Mwamba's future had only just begun, but for the first time, they would face it with open eyes and united purpose. Amara smiled grimly. Rashid the Red had made a critical mistake. He'd underestimated the chief's daughter. He'd assumed she was just a prize to be taken, a decorative piece in someone else's game. He'd never considered she might be a strategist, a fighter, and the catalyst that would turn his carefully planned raid into the beginning of his downfall. The slavers would come again. But when they did, Mwamba would be ready. And leading the defense would be a young woman who'd learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes staying silent means letting evil win, but finding your voice at the right moment can change everything. The sun rose fully over the village, casting golden light across the red earth. A new day had begun, and with it, a new chapter in Mwamba's story. One written not in submission and fear, but in courage, defiance, and the unbreakable will to remain free.